What if I told you that you can outsmart the one who has always outsmarted you? That there's a silent way to reverse the power dynamic without the manipulator even realizing they've lost control? Most people believe that against a narcissist, there are only two options: flee or be devoured. But there's a third path, one few know, that can transform the victim into the invisible master of their own protection. The world is full of emotional vampires who feed on your energy, your doubt, your need for approval. They operate in the shadows of the psyche, injecting poison disguised as care, creating dependency where there should be freedom. You've felt it before, that nagging feeling of always being wrong, always owing something, always feeling small in front of someone who presents themselves as superior. Carl Jung dedicated his life to unmasking the unconscious games of the human mind. He discovered that behind every manipulator lies an empty shadow, desperate to fill its void through controlling others. But Jung also revealed something few understood. The same consciousness that makes us vulnerable can become our most powerful weapon. The narcissist believes they know all your reactions. They map your fears, your insecurities, your weaknesses. They build a complete psychological profile to know exactly where to press to get the desired response. But what if you could break that map? What if you could present a version of yourself that completely confounded their manipulative calculations? We're not talking about direct confrontation. Confronting a narcissist is feeding their need for drama. It's giving them exactly the emotional fuel they seek. We're talking about something far more subtle and powerful. The art of becoming unpredictable within predictability, of maintaining total control while appearing vulnerable, of using the manipulator's own predatory nature against them. You no longer need to be the passive prey waiting for the next attack. You no longer need to live in constant tension, wondering when the next humiliation, the next attempt at control, the next projection of inadequacy will come. There's a way to reclaim your power without anyone realizing you've taken it back. The secret lies in understanding that every narcissist is, in fact, a slave to their own patterns. They follow predictable scripts, have specific needs that must be satisfied, and possess enormous blind spots created by their inflated ego. When you learn to identify these patterns, you can start to use their expectations to your advantage. But beware, this isn't about becoming manipulative. It's about strategic protection. It's about reclaiming your psychic space without declaring war. It's about creating an invisible barrier that protects your essence while allowing you to safely navigate toxic relationships that cannot be immediately eliminated. Today, you will discover 7 hidden ways to outsmart narcissistic manipulators. 7 techniques that Jung would call individuation through defensive cunning. Each one is a key that opens a different door to your psychological freedom. But before revealing these strategies, you need to understand something fundamental about yourself. Because the first step to outsmarting the one who outsmarts you is to recognize the illusions you still carry about your own vulnerability. Look within now. How many times have you found yourself over-explaining, justifying your choices to someone who never had the right to question them? How many times have you bowed your head, swallowed words that needed to be said, accepted blame that wasn't yours just to avoid confrontation? If these questions resonated with you, it's because you intimately know the bitter taste of narcissistic manipulation. You know what it's like to be treated as an extension of someone else's will. You know what it's like to have your feelings minimized, your perceptions questioned, your reality constantly rewritten by someone who positions themselves as the ultimate authority over your own experience. Have you ever experienced those moments where you feel like you're going crazy? When your memory of facts doesn't align with the version the other person presents? When you start to doubt yourself, to question if you really are that sensitive, that exaggerated, that problematic? This is the hallmark of the narcissistic manipulator, making you doubt your own sanity. They project their shadow onto you with surgical precision. They accuse you of being selfish when you set a boundary. They call you ungrateful when you stop sacrificing yourself for their whims. They label you dramatic when you express discomfort with the treatment you receive. And the worst part, a part of you believes these accusations. Why? Because the narcissist is an expert at activating your deepest complexes. They identify your childhood wounds, your fundamental insecurities, your fears of abandonment or rejection, and they press these points with a constancy that would be impressive if it weren't so destructive. You've become a distorted reflection of their desires. You've worn masks you no longer recognize as artificial. You've adapted your personality to minimize conflict, to be accepted, to emotionally survive in the minefield they created around you. Your authentic self was being buried under layers of learned behaviors to appease an ego that can never truly be satisfied. But here's the truth. The manipulator doesn't want you to discover. All this adaptation proves your strength, not your weakness. You've developed an extraordinary psychological sensitivity. You've learned to read between the lines, to detect subtle shifts in mood, to anticipate unexpressed needs. You've become a master of complex emotional navigation. The problem is that you use these skills only to protect yourself from the explosion, never to reclaim your lost territory. You became a diplomat in a war you didn't even realize you were fighting. You developed survival strategies when you could have developed victory strategies. While you focus on not provoking their wrath, they grow stronger. While you tiptoe around to avoid waking the monster, they consolidate their dominion over your psyche. While you accept the role of controlled victim, they feed on the energy you invest in trying to please them. But what if I told you that you can use all this sensitivity, all this capacity for emotional reading, all this adaptability, not to submit but to regain control? What if you could transform your survival tools into weapons of liberation? Do you recognize this trap? It's because you've been a target of this pattern. And today you will understand not only how it works, but how it can be completely reversed in your favor. To understand how to outsmart a narcissistic manipulator, you first need to understand the nature of the beast you're facing. A narcissist isn't simply someone with an inflated ego. They are someone whose entire psychic structure was built upon a fundamental lie, that they are superior to others, and therefore have the right to control them. This lie creates a pathological dependency. The narcissist constantly needs external confirmation of their superiority because deep down, they know it's a facade. They are like an emotional vampire who cannot generate their own energy and needs to drain the vitality of others to stay psychologically alive. Jung would call this total identification with the inflated persona. The narcissist has become a prisoner of their own mask of grandiosity and can no longer access their true self. That's why they project their rejected shadow onto you. All the aspects they cannot accept in themselves, they deposit onto their victims. When they call you selfish, they are projecting their own selfishness. When they accuse you of being manipulative, they are projecting their own manipulative nature. When they label you unstable, they are projecting their own emotional instability. This projection isn't conscious. It's an automatic defensive mechanism that protects their inflated ego from confronting reality. Here's the crucial insight. The narcissist operates through predictable patterns because they are a slave to their own neurotic structure. They need to feel superior, so they seek situations where they can exert control. They need constant admiration, so they manipulate to get it. They need to avoid any mirror that reflects their real inadequacy, so they attack anything that threatens their grandiose self-image. This predictability is their weakness. While you think they are unpredictable and dangerous, the truth is, they are trapped in a repetitive cycle of compulsive behaviors. They cannot stop manipulating because manipulation is their only means of psychological survival. What does this mean for you? It means you can learn to predict their reactions, anticipate their strategies, and prepare countermeasures that will leave them completely confused. You can become an enigma they cannot decipher, a variable that doesn't fit into any of their known control patterns. The key lies in understanding that the power they have over you is entirely based on their ability to predict and control your emotional reactions. When you remove that predictability, when you become emotionally unreadable to them, when you stop giving the responses they expect, their entire control system collapses. You don't need to become cold or insensitive, you just need to become strategic. And strategy begins with knowledge of the 7 hidden ways to outsmart the one who has always outsmarted you. The first way to outsmart a narcissistic manipulator is to master the gray rock method. Imagine yourself as a smooth, featureless rock in the middle of a garden. The narcissist is like a child looking for something interesting to play with. If you become the most boring and uninteresting thing in the environment, they will simply lose interest and look for another toy. The genius of this technique lies in its simplicity. When they try to provoke an emotional reaction from you, respond with the energy of someone reading a phone book. Use short phrases, a monotone voice, and a neutral facial expression. I understand. Okay. Could be. No explanations, no defenses, no counterattacks. Just a presence so uninteresting that they will feel like they're trying to get fire from a whetstone. The second way is strategic information restriction. The narcissist feeds on details about your life to use as ammunition against you later. They collect data about your fears, your dreams, your insecurities, and transform them into tools of control. The deception here lies in creating the illusion of transparency while keeping your deepest truths completely protected. Share only superficial and irrelevant information. Talk about traffic, the weather, neutral everyday events. When they ask about your feelings or important plans, use vague answers like, "I'm still thinking about that," or "I'm not sure yet." They will believe they have full access to your life when, in reality, they are only receiving crumbs without strategic value. The third way is tactical agreement, a form of superficial disarming that completely confuses their control system. The narcissist expects resistance because resistance feeds their sense of superiority and justifies their attacks. When you superficially agree with minor criticisms, you are removing the fuel they need to escalate the conflict. "You're right, I really could have done better. I understand your point of view. I'll consider your suggestion." These phrases don't mean you're submitting. They mean you're strategically choosing your battles. Internally, you keep your boundaries and your truth intact. Externally, you offer an agreement that leaves them with nothing to attack. The fourth way is deliberate postponement, a technique that breaks the artificial sense of urgency the narcissist creates to pressure your decisions. They want an immediate answer because time pressure gives them an advantage. When you stop time, you regain control of the situation. "I need to check my schedule and I'll get back to you. Let me analyze this calmly. I'll think about it and give you an answer tomorrow." These phrases buy you precious time to assess the situation without the emotional pressure they are trying to create. They also force them to wait, reversing the power dynamic where you are usually the one anxiously awaiting their decisions. Each of these first four ways works on the same fundamental principle, removing the predictability of your reactions. The narcissist has built a mental map of how you operate, which buttons to press to get certain responses. When you break that map, when your reactions no longer match their expectations, their entire control system short-circuits. They will start to feel insecure, confused, less confident in their manipulative abilities. And in this moment of their confusion, you reclaim spaces of freedom you had lost, not through direct confrontation but through the subtle art of becoming emotionally unreadable to someone who believed they had completely deciphered your psyche. But these are just the first four keys. The next three ways are even more sophisticated and powerful. The fifth way to outsmart a narcissistic manipulator is subtle neutrality mirroring. This technique uses their own need for control against them. The narcissist projects intense emotional energy, expecting to receive an equally intense reaction back that feeds their internal drama. When you reflect back only neutrality, they feel as if they are shouting into an echo that returns only whispers. Imitate their tone of voice but without the emotional charge. If they speak loudly, you speak at the same volume but without anger. If they use specific words, you repeat them in a neutral, detached way. "I understand you feel that way. I see that's important to you. I notice your concern." You become a mirror that reflects only the form, never the emotional content. This deeply destabilizes them because they can no longer feed on your reactive energy. The sixth way is selective validation with redirection. Here you use their hunger for validation as a subtle trap. The narcissist constantly needs confirmation, even about the most trivial things. You offer this validation, but only for completely irrelevant aspects of what they are trying to communicate. If they start an attack on your character by saying, "You never listened to me and on top of that traffic was horrible today," you completely ignore the manipulation and focus only on the neutral part. "It's true, traffic really was complicated today. By the way, did you see they're opening a new route downtown?" They are momentarily satisfied that they've been heard, but completely confused because the conversation didn't follow the attack script they had planned. The seventh and most powerful way is planned escape through focus shift. This technique uses the narcissist's greatest weakness, their inflated ego. When you notice a manipulation attempt starting, immediately introduce a topic that is of extreme interest to them, preferably something related to their achievements or personal interests. "That reminds me. How was that important presentation you gave last week? Speaking of which, did you get any feedback on that project you were coordinating?" The narcissist cannot resist the opportunity to talk about themselves. Their need to be the center of attention is greater than their need to complete the manipulation they were trying to apply. What makes this technique especially effective is that it uses their own predatory nature against them. They abandon the smaller prey, the specific manipulation, to pursue the larger prey, the opportunity to be admired and to talk about their achievements. It's like throwing a piece of meat to one side so the predator stops chasing you. These 7 ways work because each one breaks a specific pattern the narcissist expects to find in their victims. They expect emotional reactivity. You offer neutrality. They expect resistance. You offer superficial agreement. They expect immediate availability. You offer postponement. They expect total transparency. You offer controlled information. They expect to be confronted. You offer irrelevant validation. They expect you to maintain focus on their manipulation. You redirect to their ego. Together, these techniques create a completely unpredictable persona from their perspective. You are no longer following the victim's script they memorized. You are no longer giving the responses they learned to extract from you. You are becoming an enigma they cannot decipher, a variable that doesn't fit into any of their known control patterns. And when a narcissist cannot predict or control your reactions, they lose interest. Because manipulating someone unpredictable requires much more energy than they are willing to invest. They prefer to seek easier targets, more predictable ones, more willing to dance to their tune. Now that you know the 7 ways to outsmart narcissistic manipulators, it's time to transform this knowledge into conscious practice. Because understanding isn't enough. You need to integrate these strategies into your psychological structure until they become automatic responses, protective reflexes that operate even before the conscious mind perceives the threat. Start with an exercise of deep self-investigation. Grab a journal and dedicate a week to mapping your reactivity patterns. Each time you find yourself in a potentially manipulative situation, pause and observe. What is your first emotional reaction? What response would you normally give? How does your body feel? What automatic thoughts arise? This non-judgmental observation is fundamental. You are building awareness of your vulnerability points, your most sensitive emotional buttons, your conditioned reflexes that make you predictable to manipulators. Jung would call this becoming aware of the projected shadow you carry within yourself. After a week of observation, start practicing strategic interruptions. When you realize you're about to give an emotional reactive response, physically stop. Breathe deeply 3 times. Ask yourself, which of the 7 ways would be most effective in this specific situation? Don't judge yourself if you choose the wrong strategy initially. The important thing is to break the automatism of your old reactions. For each of the 7 techniques, create mental scripts that you can use automatically. For example, for strategic information restriction, always have 5 neutral phrases ready that you can use when someone asks invasive questions. I'm still organizing that in my head. I don't have a formed opinion on that yet. I need to think more about that question. Practice the gray rock method in the mirror. Literally, look at your reflection and practice expressing complete facial disinterest. Train your voice to sound monotonous but not hostile. The idea is to appear bored, not irritated. Irritation is still energy that can be converted into fuel for manipulation. Also develop your capacity for ego redirection. Keep a mental list of topics that make any narcissist in your life get lost in monologues about themselves. Every narcissist has their favorite themes: work, past achievements, special projects, opinions about other people. Use this information strategically. Remember, you are not becoming manipulative. You are becoming strategic. The difference is crucial. The manipulator uses tactics to gain an advantage over others for their own benefit. You are using tactics to protect your psychological integrity and reclaim spaces of freedom that have been invaded. Practice these techniques first in low-risk situations, with less intense manipulators in your life. As your confidence grows, you can apply them in more challenging situations. The goal is not to win a war, but to stop fighting a battle that was never your responsibility to fight. Your true essence doesn't need to be defended through direct conflict. It can be protected through the silent wisdom of someone who understood the game and chose not to be a piece on someone else's chessboard anymore. You have changed. At this very moment, as you absorb these words, something fundamental has transformed within your psyche. You can no longer be unaware of what you've just learned. You can no longer be the same person you were before discovering these 7 ways to outsmart the one who has always outsmarted you. The innocence of unconsciousness is gone forever. You now possess the map of the emotional territory you once navigated blindly. You know the patterns, identify the traps, Recognize the signs even before the manipulation fully sets in. You have become a decoder of others' shadows, a guardian of your own psychological journey. There's no turning back. When the next emotional vampire tries to drain your energy, you will see exactly what they are doing. When someone tries to project their shadow onto you, you will recognize the projection even before it sticks to your self-image. When a narcissist tries to rewrite your reality, you will firmly hold your version of the facts. You are now the unmasker of your own story. You are no longer the passive victim waiting for others to define your worth. You are no longer the distorted reflection of the desires of people who don't even know who they are. You are the living expression of your sovereign self, protected by the wisdom that comes from deeply understanding the nature of manipulation. But this is just the first layer of your individuation. Each technique you master will open space for deeper levels of self-knowledge. Each manipulator you manage to neutralize with these strategies will reveal aspects of your own strength that you didn't even know you possessed. Remember, the goal was never to become invulnerable. It was to become consciously vulnerable, choosing when, where, and with whom to open your heart. True freedom isn't in never being hurt, but in having the power to choose your wounds, to decide which battles are worth your vital energy. The 7 ways you learned today are transitional tools. They will protect you as you build the most authentic and powerful version of yourself, a version that doesn't need artifice to be respected, that doesn't need masks to be accepted, that doesn't need external approval to know it is valuable. Comment on which of the 7 ways most alerted you to patterns you were still tolerating, like if you felt the courage to break illusions that long needed to be dismantled. Subscribe to continue this journey of individuation and protection, because this is just the beginning of your psychological liberation. You are no longer the person who started watching this video. You are someone who holds keys where there were once only walls. You are someone who has reclaimed psychological territory that had been invaded. The liberation is just beginning. Awaken,